It is Friday afternoon. What date? What Friday? Friday the what? Friday the 4th. Yeah, Friday the 4th of October. And I'm TC. This is MBRR Pod with a new name change coming up pretty soon. And in the interim, while you guys are waiting to see how the name changes, it won't be anything drastic. You'll still recognize me, but we're tweaking it a little bit. Want to here at the beginning of the show give a shout out to iMav from Subscribestar, who picked up the producer spot. Words are hard for me this week, and I have no freaking idea why. So yeah. Shout out to iMav, who has picked up show producer Subscribestar for support, and a shout out to Angry Vet Tav for also picking up show producer credits for everything that he did or has done for the channel here this week alone. That is not to downplay anybody else, but like I promised, I will be giving show producer credits to top level support people because of what they do, and that's what we're doing. And a big shout out to all of the channel members, gifted members, and regular members. Thank you very much for what you do. Thank you very much for this. Thank you for continuing to support the work. Thank you for continuing ally in the fight for accountability. Accountability activism is what I promote, what I do, and I'm thankful for all the channel members. I thank you, all of you subscribers, every single person that is subscribed, everybody that watches on a regular basis. I am trying not to pay attention to the chat so much here on the front end, so I need that. Also to the channel mods, let's be let's be on the spot. You guys know my standards. I don't believe in censorship, and if there's something that you are concerned about, try and bring my attention to it if you would, and then we can make an on the spot decision. So because I think it's, if somebody is just patently being just an ass, they might be the person who needs to hear what I'm saying the most. STD, don't thank me for the gifted membership. That had to have come from the 50 that Tav laid on us the other day. So thanks to the Angry Vet for what he does. Like I said, that's how he picked up that show producer credit, was a super chat, a large super chat, and then a very large gift membership dispersal. While we're at it, folks, please, if you do enjoy the content and you are not a channel member yet, please head over and pick a channel membership up. Like this video, share this video, comment on the video. For all of my loyal watchers, faithful watchers, supporters of the channel, and hate watchers, even my hate watchers, all y'all need to be hitting the thumbs up, because that like button is alone and it's lonely. And right now it's showing that there's 17 of you watching and we only have 7 like buttons hit. And so I feel really bad for the like button. I really do. The like button is probably the loneliest person on all of YouTube. I think the like button, especially on my channel, is lonelier than the Maytag repairman ever was. So, once again, thanks everybody for being here, and now let's get into it. Brian from Here's the Deal, High Impact Flicks, put out a video that is linked in the description of this video, and I would love for you all to go watch that. Brian doesn't need me to promote him. I'm honored that Brian has popped in on a couple of my streams. Brian picked up the story of Olivia Flores and ran with it when he didn't need to. He really brought attention to Olivia's story. Oh, hey, AVA, thank you for picking up that channel membership. See, yeah, those I can't help but see because they come up big and green on my screen. But Brian from Here's the Deal is an outstanding individual. I would venture a guess that if we were to sit down over a beer or a cocktail or a mixed drink of some sort, or a coffee or a tea or whatever, we would all almost completely agree on about 99.9% of things. And that's why I'm doing this video today, because he said some stuff in the video that's linked about law enforcement, where he was brutally honest. You know, he's a brutal truth teller, pulled no punches, and he shouldn't. And one of the things that he talked about was, and we've all heard this before, and some of you have heard some of my defining a good cop videos, and we don't need a definition of what a bad cop is, because everybody knows what a bad cop is. And we all know that for the sad majority of people out there, a bad cop is easily identifiable, and a good cop is anybody who is not a bad cop. And I have been saying for several years that there's a very narrow definition of what a good cop is. And I stand by my definition of what a good cop is. I don't backtrack from that at all. And that is a cop who honors their oath, who stands up for the Constitution over everything else, who stands up for the natural rights of the people he is supposed to protect and serve, who he is a public servant to. The problem is that even though that definition is very precise, no cop sticks to that. None. But at the core of the video that Brian put out, and if somebody could find the video in the link, or the video link in the description of this video, one of the mods, if you could drop that link to Brian's channel and that very particular video, like I said, it is in the video, it's in the video description here, so if one of you could pop out and grab that and put it in the chat, it would be very helpful, so that people can go back and listen to what Brian has to say after what I have to say. In that video, Brian pointed out this trend of ex-cops coming out, ex-law enforcement coming out, and saying, I am now a constitutionalist, and I've always been a constitutionalist, or I became a constitutionalist, and I was one of the good cops. And he was right about something. There is a lot of grifting going on in the former law enforcement world. And thank you, AVA. There is a massive amount of grifting going on in the former law enforcement world. And a lot of them are liars. They're just liars. And the thing is that they could lie to us, and we're not able to ascertain, you know, whether or not they're lying. And we can read body language and all of that. We can try to read body language. Some people, we can even try to err on the side of caution, but they're all liars, because almost all of them say, I became a constitutionalist, but I was never a bad cop. I never violated anybody's rights. I never did anything wrong. I called people out, and I just got to a point where I couldn't take it anymore, and that's why I left. But I never violated anybody's rights, and a lot of the cops that I do know would never violate anybody's rights. And so they come out and they do this grifting thing because there's this void that needs to be filled. And Brian is so 100% correct. Brian is absolutely 100% right. They're grifting. They're just absolutely grifting. And while I can appreciate that their desire to, maybe they have changed, maybe they haven't. I'm going to get emotional today, folks, because, you know, see, I started my channel before I left the career field. And I don't spend a massive amount of time actually talking about my career because, and here's where it gets ugly. I knew what I was doing was wrong. It just setting apart the constitutional side of it, setting apart what I knew of the Constitution, setting apart that I knew that I swore an oath to the Constitution like I did in the military. I knew so much of what I was doing in my field of focus in law enforcement world. I knew so much of what I was doing was wrong. Like, my very first use of force incident, I was, for lack of better terminology, goaded into using the force that I used, and used a half a can of pepper spray on a non-compliant person. Now, the person that I used the pepper spray on was rightfully incarcerated. They were a violent person. They had done violent crimes. But he was non-compliant and he wasn't following orders. And my only option was to use pepper spray, and I did it, and I used half of a damn can on him, knowing that you didn't need that much. Like, the first shot's enough. If that's not working, reapplying or continuing to apply is not going to do it. And I was coached on how to write my report. How to justify the use of force. And I knew then I was wrong. You know, but I kept telling myself that I'm in this career field. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. Working on the detention end of the sheriff's office in that facility, maximum security facility, I was there for a purpose. I was there for a reason. I was there to have an impact on people's lives. And I can give, and this is not me breaking, but like, understand, I can offer to you right now, I can offer to you countless number of former detainees, one of them being Chase Johnson, whose story I have told, who have come to me and said to me, man, TC, like, I just want you to know I'm sorry for what happened to you. What they did to you at the sheriff's office was wrong. And they're right, it was wrong. You were always one of the good ones, but I wasn't. You see, I wasn't, and here's why. Because even as I began to modify my behavior and I began to step back from it, the cognitive dissonance was not enough to unsettle me to the point where I was actually being a whistleblower and calling out all of the absolute utter bullshit that was happening over and over and over and over again. And I have told the story here of a former deputy. His name was Deputy Roth, who, in the violation of Olmsted County Sheriff's Office policy, used a taser, an electronic control device, on a passively non-compliant detainee who just didn't want to get out of bed for a cell search. And that was a complete violation of policy and procedure for the Olmsted County Sheriff's Office. And that deputy was allowed to retire instead of face consequences. And I was on I was still working for the sheriff's office when this happened. And instead of going and blowing the whistle to the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension or going to the local newspaper and even doing something anonymously, I just talked about it behind the scenes and said, well, we all know what he did was wrong. And we all went to his retirement celebration that they threw for him out in our administrative break room. I knew it was wrong. I knew it was wrong when I would laugh when one of our road guys would bring somebody in and they would be non-compliant, and one of our sergeants would come out and you know, have to be the big tough guy on the scene, and so we're going to get all of this worked out by being as forceful with you as possible, and then grabbing that person when they're trying to struggle coming out of the car, grabbing that person, picking them up and slamming them down on the back of the truck, because you know what, this person doesn't have a right to fight. He's here, whatever he did, he deserves to be here. And while I maybe wasn't the one who picked him up and slammed him down, I might have had a chuckle over it. And not might. When I say that, please understand what I'm trying to say is I knew even then that it wasn't right, and I still fell into the mindset. So when somebody like Brian from Here's the Deal looks at you and says, any cop, any person in law enforcement who tells you they've never taken part in any of the corruption, any of the dirtiness, any of the violations of people's rights, please understand he's 100% right, and any cop who says it is either it. Every single person lying to themselves at the very least. If they tell you they've never taken part in the corruption, if they tell you that they've never been part of the problem, I am never going to be able to make up for it. I don't think you guys understand how much I hate myself every day. And I don't care if the hate watchers get a hold of this and they see the tears coming down my face. And they call me weak. You know what? That's fine. I'm weak. If your idea of tough, if your idea of hardcore is being able to watch somebody get abused by the system, laugh about it, and not have any regrets, then quite frankly, you're part of the problem. You're part of what's wrong with this republic, what's left of it at least. If your answer to all of these things that you hear from people like Brian, and you hear from the folks over at the Vigilance Committee, and you hear from TAV and AVA and Iowa Audits and Flex and everything else, if your response to all of these things is you guys are the problems, you're the ones that are creating the problem, you are the problem. You know, I got a video coming out tomorrow, and here I want to juxtapose why this is so important to me. I have a video coming out tomorrow. It's available for the channel members right now to watch. It's only 3.5 minutes long. But I run into a public servant. I ran into today on my lunch break. I ran into a public servant, and I went up and thanked them for something that they did, and it was a great conversation. It was a member of the Rochester, Minnesota Fire Department, and the interactions between him and me are completely different than the interaction I had. As I was saying, is be looking for the video as it drops tomorrow. I think it's 6 p.m. and it's up for the channel members now. And so if you want to see it, go and watch as a channel member and tell me, you know, that there isn't something about, you know, public service is a strange thing anyway. Being a public servant's a strange thing. They all live off the backs of the taxpayers. Of the wage slaves. But there's something in particular about the idea of being in law enforcement, being a cop, being a policy enforcer, where you swear that oath in a way that nobody else in government does. And even though so many people in these government jobs take that oath, same oath, there's a very particular niche in which people who are there to enforce the laws, who carry a firearm and have the ability to take from you your freedom, and have the ability to take from you your life at the drop of a hat, are the worst people when it comes to how they interact with the public, or the fact that they will not or cannot be bothered to actually stand up and speak out against the corruption in their agencies publicly. They cannot be bothered to do that. And Brian is so right. Like don't tell me that you spoke out, but you never lost your job for speaking out. Like, I will tell you that the reason they came for my job, the reason they came for me, was because I spoke out, and I have the documentation to prove it. But like I said, having the documentation to prove it proves that I didn't speak out before. Take a year. Why did it take a goddamn year? 1 year for them to come for me. Because before that, I wasn't doing anything. Even though I knew what I was seeing in so many situations was wrong. That's why I know it's true. When you speak out against a corrupt system full of corrupt people, you will be challenged. You will be made an example of. AVA, it wasn't you. For some reason, I lost reception for a minute. The minute you actually speak out against a corrupt system, they will come for you, and they will do their level best to build a case against you. They absolutely will build a case against you. I wasn't cursing God, Jeff LaPointe. I called it a God-damned system because it is a God-damned system. God has damned the system. And people need to understand this, especially people who consider themselves Christian, especially people who are on the right, who consider themselves law and order. God is disgusted by the criminal justice system in the United States. God is disgusted by the state of law enforcement in the United States. Here's your biblical reference for you. In Romans chapter 13, it says that God has appointed all authority that exists to be the rewarders of good and the punishers of evil. That's why authorities exist. I've got tons of people who watch, who come from different perspectives, and that's what this is about. That's why I do what I do. It's to work with people in both areas. And it's high time for Christians and the law and order people on the right side of the spectrum who still think that they have to back the blue because, well, God has told me to, or yada, yada, yada. You need to wake up and understand that what you're doing is backing an evil system, and you're using your God as an excuse to do that. It is not Christian to back law enforcement. It is not Christian to stand there and wave a thin blue line flag and say that you stand behind law enforcement and you support law enforcement. What that tells me is that you know nothing about the system. And Brian, I have said this many times, but Brian has said it several times today, or not today, in the video that I'm referring to. A stream can rise no higher than its source. So when everybody out there goes, well, the rank and file police, the rank and file cops, the rank and file deputies, the rank and file troopers, the rank and file yada yada yada, they're not they're not corrupt. It's their leadership that's corrupt. Like, well, it's the politicians that are the problem. They keep passing the laws. No. If they are genuinely good cops and they have taken their oath seriously, then they will stand up to the corruption that comes down to them from on high. And if they refuse to stand up to the corruption that comes down to them from on high, then they themselves are corrupt. And we hear this all the time from the moralizing people in the world who want to back the police at all costs. No matter what they do, we've got to give them full support. We've got to give them full credit. We have to always err on the side of giving them the benefit of the doubt. If that's who you are, then you have to ask yourselves, how many times have you told your children, don't hang out with bad apples, because you know bad apples spoil the whole bunch. I want you to understand that. There is no such thing as a corrupt system that doesn't in and of itself corrupt everybody who's in the system, who works inside of the system. You cannot get away from it. It covers you, it coats you, it eats down into your soul. And that is why when these men and women in law enforcement retire and the cognitive dissonance is sticking in their head and they can't get away from it, and they have time to be alone, time to get away from the noise doesn't ever actually go away. It doesn't go away, because what it does is it gets in your head and it works in your head, and you get every single day you remember and reflect on every one of the things that you did that was wrong, and it makes you want to eat a gun. And that's why so many ex-cops eat guns. You have got to understand that. The suicide rate in law enforcement is as high as it is, not because of what they see, but because of what they have done and what they take part in. And I'm telling you that. Because they all take part in it. Or they don't say anything when they see it happen. And that's what drives them to that state. Because they can't get away from the noise. Brian is here. Here's the deal, is here. Brian, I can't thank you enough for putting that video out today. It was a kick in the pants that I needed, because I don't think I've ever been so bold as to say I never violated anybody's rights. I know I did wrong. I know there were times that I did. But I think I was fooling myself, Brian. Thinking because I could present the string of former incarcerated individuals who would come up to me and thank me for being nice to them, for being kind to them, for doing right by them, that somehow that made up for all of the other crap. I'm crying to get more viewers. Shut up. Because that's what everybody wants to do. They want to watch a 54-year-old man who spent 13 years of his life working in the law enforcement world cry. Are you kidding me? Get bent. So I can't tell you guys enough that what Brian said in his video is true, and it applies to every single person in the law enforcement world. They know. They all know. And they'll placate themselves. They'll placate their consciences by patting themselves on the back and saying, it wasn't me, I wasn't one of them. And I'm never going to be able to make up for all of the times I turned a blind eye. I'm never going to be able to make up for the times I did wrong. And frankly, I wouldn't blame every single one of you if you all left and never came back. And I really, honestly, I don't, like I said, I don't care if all the frauditor channels that love to troll people who hold cops accountable get a hold of this and say, hey, look, there's a fake. Like, I don't care. Because I've been on both sides of this equation. And I'll tell you, I know how ugly it is. I know how ugly the system is, and I know how much it corrupts the people, and how much the people that are corrupt make the system worse. And I would much rather be doing what I'm doing now, telling people about how bad the system is, and risk the ire of people that I've known for years and respected and loved, than to continue to play this game of trying to figure out which ones are the good ones and which ones are the bad ones. And here's where it gets personal for me. My brother's been a cop for over 20 years. He's one of the reasons why I ended up, he's my younger brother, but he's one of the reasons I ended up in the career field. I haven't talked to my brother in nearly 2 years, because one of the last things that no, Jeff LaPointe, the system is not righteous. That's the poorest, weakest theology I've ever read in my life. The system is not righteous. It's not. You want to come on my show sometime? We can have a conversation about it. Today is not the day. But I'm telling you, you're wrong. But my brother and I haven't talked for over 2 years, and the last time that I talked to him, one of the things that he said is, now that you hate all cops. And this is a distinction, and they love to do this. Law enforcement and all of their backers love to do this. They love to tell you that if you don't back them, you hate them. And this is the deal. I don't hate the cops. I don't wish harm on any of them. They are family oriented people, most of them. They also have an incredibly high rate of domestic violence. But I don't hate the cops. I hate the career field. I hate what it does to the people that are impacted by it. I hate to see what it does to the people that are in it. And I hate how much it changes your minds. If you've ever lived through an abusive relationship, you, no matter how old or young you are, what that abuse begins to do is it starts to cause the synapses in your brain to change how they fire. It changes the neural pathways so that you even begin to think and feel things differently than you had before. And if it happens to you when you're young, very young, it forms who you become and who you are. And when you go into the law enforcement career field, unlike almost any other career I've ever talked to anybody in, it begins to change the neural pathways and the mind of the individual who's doing it, so that they do begin to think completely and utterly different. It is not a joke that not only do veterans sit with their backs to the wall looking at the doors, but cops in a very short period of time get to the point where that's all they think about is threat, 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 threat. Everything is a threat. But that doesn't explain the corruption. What it explains is why they can tolerate the corruption. It's a career field that, for the most part, appeals to a certain segment of society. And there again, Brian often will ask, does it create psychopaths or does it attract psychopaths? And the answer to that is yes. And for those of us that aren't psychopaths, we can feel ourselves changing. And sooner or later, you either cave into those changes or you do something that gets you ostracized. And if you ever meet a cop that's got the balls to tell you that he always stood up for what was right, but he never lost his job or was terminated for it, then you're dealing with a liar. And for a lot of them, the only thing that it takes to buy them off is the fat paycheck and a pension. And I was telling somebody today that I know how that feels, because after the last settlement offer was made and I accepted it, I realized how quickly, how much they bribe officers, deputies, troopers to remain silent. It's way past time for everybody to wake up and realize that if you have a friend or family member or a loved one that is in the law enforcement career field and they're not telling you that it's eating them alive because they don't know how to process all of the crap they're seeing and they don't know how to get away, then you're dealing with somebody that's probably too far gone. I'm not sorry that I spoke out. I'm not sorry that I lost a good paying job. What I regret is how long it took me. And I regret the fact that I lied to myself for so many years. I was part of the problem. And I'm never going to be able to change it. My small little channel is never going to make an impact. I'm sorry if I've ever misled any of you into thinking that I was one of the good ones. It may have made me one of the worst. Be different. Be better. I'm sorry.